How to predict a draw result in a football match. Is it even possible to predict a draw in football? In this video, we're going to look at some pretty big clues that a football match might just end in a draw. This is going to be pretty interesting. Let's get into it. So as football traders, we are very often looking at laying the draw, but today we're going to be talking about backing the draw and how we can find some value in backing the draw. So keep in mind, 27% of matches last season, and this is in the English Premier League, finished in a draw. 27% of that. And the average price on the draw is actually a pretty nice price. It's actually an average price of 3.40. So I mean, based on that, if you can predict a draw just as an outright bet and back it and get it right 33% of the time, then you're going to be in some pretty good profit in the long term. And of course, as football traders, we don't actually need the match to finish in a draw to be able to make a profit, which is something to keep in mind too. So if we can identify some matches that are more likely to end in a draw than others, then we could be on our way to finding a pretty profitable strategy. So if you're looking for a draw result, one of the first things you should probably look for is a match between two evenly matched teams. Now, this probably sounds pretty obvious, right? But a draw is much more likely when the two teams are pretty evenly matched. But I would definitely say, I mean, you're probably going to have to use your own judgment on this because, you know, my view on if I think two teams are evenly matched, maybe the other person across the table thinks the opposite and they think one of the teams is much stronger. So use your judgment on this. The better your judgment is, the better you're going to do, obviously. But of course, you can look at the league table. Now, don't look at the league table right at the start of the season. Wait until there's been at least 7 or 8 matches, ideally more than 10. So you can really start to judge teams based on their league position. You know, you look at two teams that are in the top 4 in the Premier League. Those teams are usually pretty evenly matched. The two teams that are both in the relegation zone, 2 teams that are both in mid-table. Those are good things to look for. And of course, you could just follow the market. You could just follow the market. And here's a quick tip. If both teams are priced below odds of 3, that's odds of 2 to 1, then they usually are pretty evenly matched. The markets are pretty good at this. You know, the football markets are pretty efficient. It's very hard to beat the markets just betting blindly. So you can actually look to the markets to give you a clue. And if both teams are priced below 3, then they are usually pretty evenly matched. And that's pretty much the market's way of telling you that, hey, this is almost a coin flip. We don't know who's going to win this. And if anything, that can actually create some value on the draw result. But of course, it's not just that. If we can also find a match between 2 even teams who are also low scoring teams, then we might be even closer to finding a match that is going to be a draw. Basically, the lower the goal expectancy, the higher the likelihood of a draw. To win a match, you need to score goals. So if there isn't expected to be many goals, you could be looking at a 0-0, you could be looking at a 1-1, or you know, maybe a 1-0 or a 0-1 either way. But that fits in with the low goal expectancy. So the lower the goal expectancy, the higher the likelihood of the draw. So you keep that in mind. And then if you wanted to search for a match which could be a draw, study the recent goal scoring form of both the teams. Look at how many goals they're both scoring and try and make a decision there. Sometimes it's quite obvious. Just looking at a team's recent form, you'll see that, hey, you know, they drew a blank in the last game. Maybe the game before that, they managed 1 goal. The game before that was another blank, and just look for similar patterns like that. And of course, at the same time, again, you could follow the market. The markets are very, very efficient, and the markets are based on statistics. So the markets would have taken the recent goal scoring form into account. And if it was low recently, then you're going to expect that the price from the markets on under 2.5 goals is pretty low. So here's a tip. If the price on under 2.5 goals is 1.65 or lower, then this is a match with a very low goal expectancy. Generally, you will find the price on under 2.5 goals to be an average of 1.90. The markets usually have it close to a 50% chance. But if it's priced 1.65 or lower, then that means it's a pretty low goal expectancy. And at the same time, that can potentially put some value on the draw result. Because like we said earlier on, the draw result is an average of 3.40. And you very rarely see a draw result below 3. Draw results are very rarely below 2-1. I think the lowest you might see it in maybe some French leagues or the Italian leagues is maybe 2.80, maybe 2.60. But it's still a pretty good odds on the draw, especially when you're taking all of this into account. But before we go any further, I just want to give you guys a quick heads up. Check the link in the description. I am giving away a free draw predictor checklist, absolutely free. It's a PDF. If you download it, there's a checklist that you can tick off before any football match which you suspect is going to be a draw. Use the checklist. If you score 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, then that match is probably showing value of being a draw, and it's probably a match which you either have a bet on the draw or you use a trading strategy which is going to take advantage of the fact that you're expecting the match to be a draw, to be pretty tight as well. So like I said, that is in the description. You can wait until the end of the video, or you could go grab it now. You just go down there, download it, and it's all yours. So moving on, another big thing to consider when you're trying to predict a draw is, could both teams actually be happy with a draw? So before the match begins, decide, would a draw actually be a good result for both teams? Now, you can work this out by maybe looking at the league table scenarios, or you could think about the upcoming fixtures for both teams. Now, the league table scenarios is one instance. I mean, you could have a team that, a team at the top playing a team at the bottom. If the team at the top needs a point to win the league, and the team at the bottom needs a point to avoid relegation, so they both are happy with a draw, then I probably want to be backing the draw in that sort of scenario. We can all think back as well to that time when Euro 2004, if you have a long memory, you remember Denmark and Sweden. They needed a 2-2 draw for both teams to qualify from their groups. Lo and behold, that match finished 2-2. Both teams were happy with a draw that day, and somehow it ended in a 2-2 draw. I'm not gonna make any accusations about anything strange going on there, but it did finish 2-2. I mean, we can also think back to other scenarios. There was a time going back a few years back where Manchester United needed a point to win the league. They were away to Blackburn Rovers. I think Blackburn were fighting relegation. I can't really be too sure, but you could imagine Blackburn would be happy with a point against Manchester United, when they're fighting relegation, and Manchester United would be happy with a point because it's going to make them win the league. That match finished 1-1. And if you ever remember watching that match for the final 10 minutes, I think Manchester United just kicked the ball around in their own half and did not try and score a goal. So keep that in mind. And now what can often happen when both teams are happy with a draw is that the first half could play out with both teams attacking and trying to win the match. But in the second half, when it starts to become inevitable that the match is drawn, if it's still level, if it's 0-0, if it's 1-1, then inevitably you're going to find both teams start to attack less. So that's a big pointer for those who bet in play as well. So you don't have to back the draw at kickoff. You can back the draw late on when it's a scenario where both teams are happy with a draw, and it's actually it is a draw in like the 60th minute, the 70th minute. That can be a great time to back the draw. You don't necessarily have to back the draw at the start of the match. So keep that in mind. And also think about the upcoming fixtures for both teams. We saw a scenario this season where Liverpool had a second leg in the Champions League, which they were prioritizing. They went away to Everton. It is a derby. Everton probably going to be happy with a draw against Liverpool. They will probably be happy to avoid defeat there. And Liverpool are going to be happy with a draw. They're going to be happy to avoid defeat because they got a bigger game coming up. And that match finished 0-0. So just keep all these things in mind. And obviously, if you can add it on to what we spoke about earlier with 2 evenly matched teams and 2 low scoring teams, then you could definitely be on your way to finding a match that is going to end in a draw. And on the flip side to that, you can also look for matches that neither team can actually afford to lose. And this can happen both ends of the table. It can happen in the World Cups, all those sorts of scenarios there. And when neither team can really afford to lose that match, it's going to result in a tight, tense affair with little attacking ambition. Less attacks means less goals. So like I said, look for this in the big matches. Cup finals, knockout tournaments, the business end of the football season. Those are going to be the tight matches, and they're going to be lacking in attacks. But of course, here's a little tip here. It can be the flip side of the matches we just spoke about. Now, what can happen when neither team can afford to lose is that the beginning of the match is very, very tight. So that could actually put more value on the halftime draw. Now, what can happen is that the beginning of the match is very tight because no team in such a big match wants to be out of it early on. They don't want to go for the attack and then find themselves hit on the break and then they're a goal or even 2 goals down. It's such a big match. No team really wants to do that. So the first half of these sorts of games can be very, very tight. But in the final 20 minutes, I mean, that's when, if it's level and in the final 20 minutes, that's when you start to see teams try and score. So on the flip side to this, these sorts of matches, you're probably better off backing the draw in the first half market rather than the draw overall. And of course, again, if you're betting in play, then you can see how the match pans out and react according to that. So if you can find a match that fits a lot of that criteria, then you are probably on your way to finding some value in favoring the draw, whether that's just having a straight bet on the draw, or favoring it in play, or trading the draw in some way. Now, I'm going to quickly cover some rookie mistakes, some common rookie mistakes that happen when it comes to predicting draws. Now, this can happen in one of 2 ways. So some would look at the recent draw history and then use that to predict a draw. So some would look at the home team and then look at their recent form and say, hey, they've drawn a few matches, and so is the away team. So this means that this match is probably likely to be a draw, even though those other matches actually have no impact on this current match. Because, if anything, the fact that those teams have drawn matches recently might mean that they're going to go for the win even more because they need a win. So it doesn't really have an impact on the previous match just because they've drawn some matches recently. You're much better off looking at the goal scoring form of the team. As mentioned earlier, if they're not scoring many goals recently, that's a big indication that this match could end in a stalemate. But on the flip side, I also see some believe that if a team hasn't drawn in a while, then this makes the draw more likely. And this is a gambler's fallacy. And it's similar to expecting to walk into a casino and expecting black to turn up on roulette if red has come up 5 times in a row. The previous outcomes have no impact on this current match. And that is something to keep in mind when you're trying to predict a draw. So anyway, thanks for watching. Remember, like I said, download the free checklist. There is a free checklist. It's exclusive to only people who have watched this video. Go download that. That is absolutely free. In the meantime as well, click this button here and become a subscriber. There's also some other videos for you to watch after this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.